Welcome to Beyond This Point Ministries. I'm Joyce, your host, and I'm happy you tuned in. I suspect many of you are back to hear part 2 of a beautiful Mother's Day morning. If you missed part 1, you might want to click on it first, then revisit part 2, because it's a celebration of motherhood. It's a different sort of venue, but a celebration nonetheless. If you'll recall, I was walking you through mother-daughter relationships, how beautiful they can be, and how empty they can be as well. My prayer by sharing this message with you about the relationship my mother and I shared is that you will strive to achieve a connection with your mother, regardless of what your past has been. If you enjoy a healthy, nurturing relationship like the one my daughters and I share, I applaud you, and I would challenge you to keep that going. It's a satisfying ingredient in your life. Work on making yours special. I'll pick up with after my mother's death. Yes, the 8-week hospital visit turned out well, but we had her 8 weeks longer than we had planned. It was enough time to bring 8 siblings and umpteen grands and great-grands around for final goodbyes, even though she would be in a very sedated state much of the time. She would be coherent long enough, however, to see all of her children, and she loved nothing better in life. My story will pick up 6 months after my mother had passed away, however. It was a beautiful June morning after her death, and I was enjoying God's mastery as I had my exercise run that morning. The air was crisp in Indiana at 6:30. Without any warning whatsoever, the image of Mother's death flashed in my head. Why did it have to spoil the moment? Step by step, the pounding of the pavement recounted each step we took climbing that staircase in the hospital room that day. As I brushed back the uninvited tears, I once again prayed, Father, please help me with my grief. I don't want to remember my mother's last breath. I want to remember the good times, the special times, the ones that leave my heart full and glad. Death of a suffering loved one is a double-edged sword. No one enjoys seeing someone they love suffer, but it is equally as difficult to let them go. There is that period of sorrow that flows through your soul and then, without warning, floods your thoughts with a mixture of emotions. I have experienced death of someone special by way of a phone call, or gathered around with families of dying loved ones, and some I was especially close to. And now through holding the hand of my mother while she drew her last breath. In many respects, it was much easier to hear someone announce the passing via phone. On the other hand, to be able to say goodbye to someone you hold dear is priceless. Sorting through the pros and cons of such experiences bears its own set of emotions. The experience of watching them die brings with it less than tranquil thoughts. It's not easy to let go of the unpleasant memories that accompany such an assignment. How do you rid yourself of the bad memories and hang on to the good ones? I continued with my jog, but just could not shake this feeling. My thoughts continued. I must get past this stage of mourning. Please, Lord, give me another way to look at this picture of loss. You gave me the strength to walk her there. Please give me the vice to squeeze the ugliness out of those last hours of this head of mine. That's what I needed, a vice for memory. If I could invent the apparatus to fit this head and dial up bad memories, flip the switch, let the bad memories be compressed and extracted, move over, Oprah. I'll be the richest woman in the world. What a great idea, I thought. But short of a lobotomy, the likelihood of extracting bad memories is implausible. I stopped dead in my tracks. It was as though he had dropped the stone tablet right into my hands, and his message became so clear. I gifted you that time with her. It was your last journey you would take together. You walked her to my door. Don't miss the blessing of the memory. I found a spot and I sat, recalling memories one after another, savoring this blessing the Lord had just reminded me of. She was mother to me, mama to my 7 siblings. I can't recall exactly when I began calling her that. My endearment of her, among other situations, would cost me the label of Miss Sophisticated or Miss Goody Two-Shoes, City Girl, and, well, you get the picture. I didn't mind the name-calling because I liked being set apart. Besides, it would define me in years to come. I grew up on a farm in a small South Georgia rural community. My father sharecropped mostly tobacco, but we had many acres of corn and garden vegetables, watermelons and the like. The lack of technology in tobacco farming several decades ago caused families of the more zealous farmers to suffer long, tedious hours of labor. The lessons learned from the arduous task we endured equipped all 8 children with skills to become good providers, but it instilled a work ethic that is seldom seen in the workplace today. The milieu is where I would learn the expedient use of my hands and develop stamina for long hours of consuming tasks that would serve to bolster not only my career as a freelance court reporter, but also my role as a minister's wife. It doesn't take much to trigger explicit memories of your past. Each of us has those we would probably like to forget, but they tend to dig their claws in deeply. Time causes us to forget the hold they have on us until some little insignificant event activates the instant replay of the mind. Then suddenly, here we go again. There are those memories, however, that mellow you when they come to mind, and their visits are soothing and serene. They come and are welcome, and they burrow back into the recesses of the psyche until they are called upon again to replenish a hungering spirit. Mother and I had a repertoire of memories, and some daunting and others glorious. The scenario we were embracing as a family with Mother this day would not have been a choice any of her children would have elected. None of us were ready to lose her. She was only 73 years old, had lived an extremely hard and sad life, was in poor health, but she was our mother. It was a difficult bond to relinquish. She had been in this small South Georgia hospital with pneumonia just a little more than a couple of weeks prior to this recent course of events. She was readmitted due to bleeding she had incurred from an abdominal dose of Lovenox administered to her during the complications with the pneumonia of her heart. The medical care she received was lacking, and her readmission would turn into a 4-week nightmare that would ultimately leave a void in the lives of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Her primary care physician was encouraging until he saw she had reached a point of no return. She developed Pseudomonas infection, which was discovered too late, and the end was imminent. The decision was made to take her off the respirator, realizing it would guarantee her demise. He told the family that considering her weakened state, she would be gone within a matter of 4 to 6 hours. The difficulty came when the medical professionals kept her on all the fluids they had been providing her in prior weeks in order to sustain her. My mother had always been a tough cookie. She'd been a hard worker. Rearing 8 children in and of itself had been demanding. Being the wife of the tobacco farmer who sharecropped more acres than was physically possible for one family to tend to would tax her with added responsibilities that would keep her beaten down with fatigue for the rest of her life. As I have alluded in other productions, my father was an alcoholic and a male chauvinist to the nth degree. Having endured a childhood of abuse, he chose to continue the pattern rather than make a difference. He exercised no self-control of his temper, and one or more of us would fall victim to his heavy hand and sharp tongue on a daily basis. My mother would suffer the greatest from his atrocious abuse. I suppose most everyone who loses a loved one has a sense of regret for something he or she wishes had been done differently, better, or perhaps more frequently. Each member of the family standing around her deathbed that day reflected on moments of regret, as well as the special times we had shared with her. The faces would tell it all, as one by one the children came to spend their private moments with their mother and grandmother. Even though she was in a weakened, sedated condition, I'm certain she was aware of the outpour of love from her family. Even in her undermined state, she rallied around us to bring comfort, as she had at times before. At 10 a.m. on the Monday before Christmas, we would pull the plug. However, the fluids continued to flow through her veins. counteracting what should be occurring more rapidly. We were on a journey that none of us expected to be as heart-wrenching as it proved to be, and least of all me. One brother would be driving from North Carolina and one from Atlanta to the hospital in South Georgia. She would not pass until she felt the touch and heard the voices of each and every one of her 8 children. By midnight, she was already exhausted, her lungs filling up with fluids, her heart failing, but her body was still being nourished and encouraged to survive with the fluids. My sister, the baby, was having an extremely difficult time, wanting to see Mother through till the end. One of our brothers would have a light heart attack and add to the drama of the day. Emotions were high. Fatigue was setting in during the vigil, and Mother was not letting go of the fight. Her stats were beginning to decrease, and her struggle became greater as she began to build up fluids in her body due to the lack of output. The medical staff had not yet taken the multiple fluids away, even though questioned by the family. It became evident that Mother's fight to die would be as difficult as her fight for survival during her life. It grieved my spirit to know that she could not even die without struggling. The night was long and laborious, and we stood over Mother's bed, and I began to recount the memories that flooded my soul of our good times together. I calculated them as having been somewhat extreme while going through them, but suddenly these times became precious as gems. It was an answer to the prayer I had been uttering in my spirit for God to render comfort to my mom. I began to reminisce with Mother of the long nights we had together as we sat putting up vegetables from the many acres of gardens we had, on the heels of a tiring day that would begin at 4 a.m., preparing meals for the family and laborers, gathering tobacco all day, picking vegetables to clean and put up, washing laundry and hanging it out on the line to dry by moonlight or lack thereof, feeding and cleaning up after everyone from the evening meal. Mother and I would sit and begin shelling butter beans and peas, cutting up okra, tomatoes, and shucking and creaming the corn. There would be no stopping until the next day's meal was taken care of, and then the excess would be frozen and or canned for the winter time supply. My soothing words kept flowing. Mother, can't you see us sitting in that living room shelling those butter beans? You always made it so fun. You raced me. I would try my hardest to beat you, get a bigger pan than you and fill it up faster. I knew sometimes you would let me win, but I also knew the times when I won outright. And oh, the corn. We would have bushels and bushels sitting there, staring us in the face, beckoning us to shuck and scrape it off the cob. But I never minded that much, did I, Mother? I ate so much of it, you told me I had to put up my share, plus some for everybody else. I just dug in and got the job done. It was your least favorite chore to do, so you just turned me loose and let me go with it. You were always surprised how fast I turned it out. We kind of cheered each other on, and it made our long nights go by faster. I was talking constantly to Mother, continuing to stroke her face and wiping her brow, brushing back her hair, smiling and recalling every possible scenario I could draw from my memory banks. I would not stop. Not yet. Unfortunately, a minister's wife witnesses far more than her fair share of injustice and death, so I had seen people die many times before. I recognized the signs, and I knew Mother was not close to leaving us yet. Death is never very easy, and a mother's death is especially difficult. I'll stop here with the story, and we'll pick up next week with the final episode of A Beautiful Mother's Day Mourning. Thank you for joining Beyond This Point with Joyce Oglesby. May God bless your days, your home, and your life. See you next week.